It's your Thursday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day and hope everybody out there is having a good one as well. Really good show coming up. Harrison Wind from Denver, podcaster, covers the Nuggets out there, will help us get ready for Timberwolves versus Nuggets. Still a couple days away. That series starts Saturday in Denver. I thought it'd be really helpful to get outside perspective, get a perspective on the Nuggets from someone who's covered the team very closely all year and in past years. So Harrison Wind will join me here in just a little bit. We've had some success with that in recent weeks. Orlando Ledbetter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution talking Kirk Cousins, a month or two ago before free agency, and then not too long ago having Tom Curran on from NBC Sports to talk Patriots, potential Vikings trade there. So just love that outside perspective, the perspective when something becomes a big story here involving another market. So Harrison Wind here in just a little bit. We'll talk a little bit of transfer portal. Can't get away from the portal. Gophers men's basketball at the end of the show. Maybe a tiny bit of NBA after that as well. Little Wolves leftover thoughts there as well. First, though, what I miss. You would like to think that a team on a 10-game winning streak would have nothing but good news right now. And plenty of it's good, obviously, for the Twins. They were 7-13 at one point this season. They are now 17-13 after beating the White Sox again yesterday. 10-5 was that final. Another rally. They were down kind of in the middle innings, rallied, took a lead, then blew it open in the ninth inning with 4 runs to make that comfortable. So Twins win. They've beaten the White Sox 7 times in the last 10 days. They beat the Angels a few times. 2 of the worst teams in the American League, right? So not taking anything away from the win streak. You got to win those games. Impressive. Turned their season around. Made me, kind of rethink how quickly I gave up on this season and how bad I thought they looked after 20 games, which they did. But we do have to remember 20 games in a baseball season does not define a baseball season. It's basically, 1/8 of a season. If it was the NFL, that would have been 2 games in. Say his NFL team started 0-2. You'd be like, okay, this is trouble. This is bad, but not time to panic yet. You could still turn your season around. I think the Twins have done that to a certain degree. They've done it largely with hitting. The offense has really picked up, and a lot of that's been the bottom of the order that I thought was really shaky. Some of their role players that they were not getting anything out of really came alive during this 10-game stretch. Carlos Santana's been much better. Willie Castro has his average up to 270, OPS almost 800. Ryan Jeffers has been great all year. Trevor Larnach and Jose Miranda have given them a huge boost while they try to overcome some of these injuries. And obviously the return of Max Kepler has helped. Now Carlos Correa back. Kyle Farmer getting a few hits like Alex Kirilloff. The lineup that looked suspect, that you looked at and you're like, man, where are they going to score runs? Suddenly they're getting contributions up and down the lineup, and that has made a huge difference for them in this 10-game win streak. It hasn't been just that. Sometimes it's been good starting pitching. Sometimes it's been the bullpen. Sometimes it's been all 3 of those things. But really the lineup depth that looked so suspect just 10 days ago has really come around and helped them. Now, obviously, the question is, can they do this against better teams? Much better competition coming up soon. The Red Sox come to town Friday for a series. They've got a bunch of games against the American League East coming up this month, which will be a much bigger test than the White Sox and Angels. At the very least, they have put themselves in a position where the season's not lost, right? Like if they'd gone through this stretch and gone 4-6 against these bad teams, you'd be like, okay, maybe it is time to panic now. Now it is time to reevaluate where they are. And we'll certainly do more of that tomorrow. Even Phil Miller expected to join me, Twins beat writer, to kind of set up this next stretch, talk through these 10 games, and get to a couple other things, which I'm now going to get to on this show. First of which, these are the reasons why the optimism isn't quite universal. 1, Byron Buxton had to leave Wednesday's game with knee soreness. It's the same knee that's given him problems in the past. That is not good news. Going to have an MRI. He'd been playing a lot this year. He had been in center field for the majority of games, DHing some of the other ones. Like really seemed like he was more or less back. And so now you're dealing with a Byron Buxton injury. You're dealing with, the uncertainty there of one of your best players, certainly someone who makes your defense so much better, someone who can carry you offensively. can, influence, disrupt games on the base path. Someone that you thought, can you get through a full season with him and things look good for a month, and now we will have to reevaluate that. So we will see where he is out. He is out with that. We'll see how long that takes, but usually there's caution with Buxton, and you never know exactly when we are going to see him again. So that's one reason we got to temper optimism on the Twins. The other is this ugly TV situation still looming over them. It was kind of like hanging like a black cloud all off season until they decided to stick with Bally Sports North. And now, of course, Comcast dropping Bally Sports across the country, but of course, including here, and dropping Bally Sports North Tuesday night. Wednesday was the first time you really felt it because the Twins played an afternoon game. Comcast customers could not watch the game, was not available to them. They are alienating a lot of fans right now. Opportunity, of course, for some of us who are more enterprising. Patrick Royce, Star Tribune columnist, of course, and my Monday regular guest, tweeted, Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia read the news and comics during the New York City newspaper delivery strike in 1945. As a public service during the Twins blackout, I believe the Strip should have Randball, that's me, read play-by-play on video in the AM with his kids offering stick figure highlights. Wow, that's a lot to take in. That's a lot to think about. I've been mulling this over a little bit. I'm not going to lie. If we get a little deeper into this and it's still going on, maybe I will figure out a way to make this happen in some way, shape, or form. You can weigh in on whether you think this is a good idea or not, or if this is just a passing joke. But I'm entertaining it at the very least. But that's what it's come to, right? If you can't see it, let's reenact it. Let's try to get it reenacted. But more than that, the Twins are alienating Twins. All parties here are combining to alienate fans. They just want to watch the games. I think I got a lot of reasonable emails. I've seen a lot of reasonable things on Twitter, but this one is probably my favorite email. Reader writes in, it was 3:33 a.m. So maybe you can kind of guess the tone of this email. 3:33 a.m. this morning said, hey, you know what? The Twins and Bally Sports can go take a flying bleep at a rolling donut, or if they prefer, go bleep a duck's bleep, or maybe do both. Neither one of them care about the people who support their business. They are really starting to bleep people off. So there you go. That's the less nuanced take that I got via email at 3:33 a.m. today. That's the kind of crystallized sentiment about a lot of people, right? Like, people were mad. I've been annoyed for years that you can't get them on these streaming services that used to have them, right? I had Sling for a while, then they dropped him. They have Hulu, then they dropped him. YouTube TV, then they dropped him. So you're kind of playing whack-a-mole with whatever service you're going to get. I haven't made the switch back to cable or satellite. I could have, but I didn't. But a lot of people who stuck with cable or satellite, part of the reason was they felt kind of invincible. They're like, hey, all you guys out there who changed, I'm sitting here watching the Twins all the time, and now Comcast, the biggest, one of the biggest carriers nationwide, huge provider in this market, all of a sudden you can't get it on Comcast. You can't get Comcast Infinity cable. Can't get the Twins on Bally Sports North on Comcast right now. That is angering a lot of people who have been loyal, a lot of people who thought, hey, at the very least, if I stick with this is what I'm going to get. So I don't know where this is going. My reporting yesterday indicated, I talked to a source, indicated that Comcast wants these Bally Sports North channels to go to a higher price tier, a higher tier on the digital scale, a digital kind of subscription level that costs about $20 more a month, instead of just kind of subsidizing all the people who don't want these channels and having to pay the higher, having them all pay the higher fees. And obviously Bally's Diamond Sports doesn't want that. They want all the subscribers on the lower tier, so it's more accessible, things like that. So I can see both sides. Comcast has had different smaller RSNs, not this huge bundle that Bally's has, but has had smaller RSNs join this digital tier. So interesting to see how this plays out. My sense is that as long as there's no movement on, agreeing to go onto this higher tier, these channels aren't going to be on Comcast. And if the longer this draws out, the more upset people are going to be, the more they're going to be clamoring for something different in 2025. And if you remember, the Twins had an opportunity to do something different in 2024. Their contract with Bally with Diamond was up. They could have gone in a different direction, could have gone with MLB. They almost certainly got the most money they could get by sticking with Bally, sticking with Diamond. Now they are stuck in this position where a lot of their fans, a lot of the paying customers at Comcast cannot get their games, and it is making people mad, even in the midst of a 10-game winning streak. Really happy to be joined today by Harrison Wind from DNVR. Podcast covers the Nuggets out there. Harrison, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for doing this. Just thought it'd be a good time. I've done this in the past. When we have an intense story that involves another market. We brought on some teams that were kind of linked to the Vikings with the draft a few weeks ago on this show, and now, of course, Timberwolves and Nuggets set to play second round series starting Saturday in Denver. Wanted to hear from you, Harrison, on just kind of the season for Denver, the quest to repeat as champions, and just all the interesting kind of storylines that come with this series. So, first off, how are you doing, and how excited are you for all this?
I'm really excited for it. Nuggets had the Lakers in the first round. I think most of us in Denver thought it would be a series Denver handled pretty easily. And, in the end, it was a 5-game series, gentleman's sweep. Anytime you take care of a team in 5 games, it's a job well done. Those games were tight, though. Those games were stressful. I mean, 2 Jamal Murray game winners. And in every game, Denver pretty much had to come from behind, too. So I'm happy to get through the Lakers. I'm happy to be done with them. I never want to watch another Nuggets-Lakers game again if I don't have to.
Okay.
And really excited for this Timberwolves series because I got a lot of respect for Minnesota. I have a lot of respect for how they were built, with Tim Connolly at the helm there. They're well coached. They're deep. They match up with Denver well. So I can't wait for this series.
I agree. I think it's going to be a really good series. I can't see it going less than 6 really at this point, just because of how, they both won 2 during the regular season, and there was, various players who were in or out for some of those games. But, the games that mattered the most, it felt like they were really competitive, and each team knows the other inside out. They play each other so much. Denver's been kind of the same team for a while now. And like you said, the interesting kind of, added layer to this with Tim Connolly having built a lot of that Denver roster, and now having built some of, putting the finishing touches on this Minnesota roster and really building it into this. How much respect is there still in Denver for Tim Connolly versus, hey, he left and now he's gone and things like that?
There's still a lot of respect in Denver for Tim Connolly. I mean, he's been here since the very beginning, since before Nikola Jokic's rookie season. He obviously drafted him. He drafted the core of this team, Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. He traded for Aaron Gordon. So he was directly responsible. And you can even link him to the KCP trade, even though that was completed after he was done. He was definitely responsible for 4 of the 5 starters on, what I think is the best starting lineup in the NBA. And, what Tim Connolly did here is he stayed patient. He built through the draft. He didn't skip any steps. There were a lot of calls throughout the early days of the Jokic era to, trade Jamal Murray for Kyrie Irving, trade him for James Harden. And those deals were available to the Nuggets if they wanted them. But he stayed patient. He saw the vision. And he trusted, the roster. He trusted Michael Malone because, there were definitely some rocky times early when a lot of people didn't know if he was the coach that could take this team over the top. And so he stayed with it. And, I just have respect for how patient and how he saw the process through. And, how he definitely was one of the first people to ever think Nikola Jokic could be the best player in the world.
He's brought a lot of that patience to Minnesota. I think a lot of us got impatient a year ago when, you bring in Rudy Gobert and he's not what they wanted him to be in year one, and the roster just doesn't look like it fits. You're like, what are they going to do? Are they going to trade Karl Anthony Towns? And would Gobert, is this a bust? Yeah. People are saying the worst trade ever. Do they have to blow this up? And he's like, no. Like, year one was year one. Let's see how this goes in year 2. And I think that patience has certainly been rewarded, and, maybe rewarded even more down the road here. Because like you said, like Denver, it took a while to get from, playoff achiever, get there, win a series or 2 to become the champion. What was that How important was that continuity for Denver over that stretch of, making the playoffs but not getting over the hump? And was it, what's the secret sauce that it all came together for them a year ago and winning the title?
The secret sauce is the continuity. It's the chemistry. It's the connectivity. That's the secret ingredients why the Nuggets are so good. Yes, they have the best starting five in the league. They have the best player in the league. They have one of the arguably historically, statistically, the biggest playoff riser ever in Jamal Murray. But the secret is this is a real team, and I think Minnesota mirrors this in a lot of ways as well. This isn't the Suns. This isn't the Lakers. This isn't a team that gets thrown together in the summer or at the trade deadline and just you throw those guys on the court and you try to win a championship. They've been through the battles together. They've been through the wars, the bubble, 2-3-1 comebacks. That was with Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, and Michael Porter Jr. and Michael Malone and a lot of the coaching staff. Then Jamal Murray gets hurt, and you kind of have this 2-year waiting period where you obviously don't have a championship team, but you've still got to, have the ingredients kind of in place. So they trade for Aaron Gordon. That was before Jamal Murray actually got hurt, but he got hurt, a couple weeks later. And so, the reason why the Nuggets don't fold in fourth quarters, a reason why they have such a great clutch offense and they just beat teams in close games is they have Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray, but they just trust each other. The chemistry is incredible. They don't care who gets the credit. They don't care if it's Michael Porter hitting the game winner, or if it's Jamal Murray. Nikola Jokic would probably rather it be one of those guys than him. So just they're so connected and they don't panic. Those in that Lakers series, they were down 20 points in game 2. There was no panic. There was no second guessing what they were doing. The coaching staff wasn't scrambling. They trust themselves to, pull out of any hole. And it's the reason why in the playoffs, they haven't looked rattled in these last 2 seasons, really.
It's hard to compare seasons, but compare last year where everything comes, falls into place. Regular season's great. Playoffs, they run through it and they win their championship, to this year. It's always harder to win a second time. The circumstances change. You had Jamal Murray again banged up this year for a while with that calf injury that still seems like it's somewhat of concern. I mean, from what I read, there was still even debate over whether he should even play game 5. And then of course he has a great game and then hits the game winning shot. What's the difference between those 2 seasons and where do you feel like they are right now? Kind of ascending, kind of same place they've been, or where do you see them right now?
Yeah, this season was interesting because they won 57 games. That was 4 more than they won last year.
Right.
But the consensus, the feeling around the team is they're a little worse, just a tiny bit. And I think a lot of that came from, you lose Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, who wasn't great in Denver, wasn't very good even, but he's just a trusted veteran. And you replace those guys with Christian Brown and Peyton Watson and Reggie Jackson. The bench has been a disaster all season. It was last year as well, but that stuff just doesn't matter as much in the playoffs because you're mixing and matching starters more. But the story of the Nuggets season was the bench, but also, Jamal Murray. He talked about wanting to be an all-star, talked about wanting to be an all-NBA guy heading into this season. And, he only played 59 games. He played 65 last year coming off the ACL injury. And, he was good. I think he took some steps with his game. I think he's reading the floor better. I think he's a better passer, better defender than he's ever been. He shot the ball much better from 3 as well this year, career high. But I don't know if he took the leap people thought he would. And, all that's cool in the regular season because you trust him to be this huge playoff riser in the postseason. You're like, all right, you can take a while getting back from injury. We know you can get banged up during the regular season, but in the playoffs, the Nuggets know he'll come with it. But yeah, in the first round, he looked mediocre. He looked pretty average, even a little below average. So it's going to be interesting what happens with him. He's definitely not 100% right now. He's definitely still banged up. I don't know how he was able to deliver that game five
Yeah.
performance against the Lakers pretty much on one leg. There were a lot of people within the Nuggets that were like, no, you're not playing. And he pretty much said, yeah, I am. Um, so we'll see how he looks. And that's really going to be the determining factor for this team. If Jamal Murray is great, I think the Nuggets are unbeatable. If he's less than that, I think they are beatable this season.
Jokic, obviously, we know a lot about him. He does everything. He's, like you said, best player in the league. The MVP awards speak for themselves. How do you, interesting matchups with how you guard him? Do you put Towns on him? Do you put Gobert on him? Do you try to throw Jaden McDaniels on him sometimes, and then have Gobert kind of like playing center field? Like you can do a lot of different things with the matchups in Minnesota, but a lot of times it just doesn't matter because he's that good. You watch him more closely probably than, all but a handful of people probably, the coaching staff, things like that. Like what is it about him that just makes it impossible to stop him?
He's smarter than every player on your team, and he's smarter than your coach too. That's
He's healthier
kind
than
of
the
what it
Minnesota
comes
coach,
down
that's
to.
for sure.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's a crazy
Yeah, it
little
is.
twist to this series. Um, he's seen every coverage. He's seen every defensive scheme at the highest levels. He knows what to do in every situation. Um, it was interesting against the Lakers. They double teamed him really hard the entire series, and the Nuggets just couldn't make a three. They shot terribly from three in every game that series, pretty much except game five, when they finally started to hit some shots. But, the Wolves do have the ingredients to guard him, I think, the best way possible. And, that's just size. It's size, physicality, and length. And that's what Minnesota has. Um, the Rudy Gobert matchup is interesting because I've never looked this up, but I have to think that Jokic has played against Rudy Gobert maybe more than he's played against any other player.
It's got to be same conference for a long time, and both guys
Same
healthy, a
conference,
lot of
same
minutes. Yeah,
division,
yeah.
the playoff series as well with Utah. He knows Rudy Gobert inside and out, but Rudy Gobert is still like defensive player of the year for a reason. He will make him work. Then you've got Towns at 6'11", 7 foot. Not a great defender, but their size. Naz Reid, same thing, size and physicality. So you've got bodies that you can throw at him, and you've got the thing where you can put Towns on him and have Rudy Gobert off ball as well. I don't think any defensive scheme works against Nikola Jokic over the course of a series. I think stuff can work for a quarter, for a half, but then he'll figure it out. But, Minnesota has enough different things that they can throw at him to make it interesting.
There was some made last year of, the Wolves were banged up, but they gave, even though it didn't necessarily look super competitive in the end, it was a 5-game series, kind of like that Lakers series was this year. I think it was even mentioned, maybe, I can't remember if it was Bruce Brown, somebody mentioned it like, hey, the Wolves gave them a tough series. They gave them maybe one of the bigger challenges they had along the way last year. And I don't know if that's just, in retrospect, things like that, but it did feel like that series was at least relatively competitive, especially with the year the Wolves had and with, the injuries that were piling up. Naz Reid getting hurt, Jaden McDaniels hurt right before the series started. Given all that, I feel from Minnesota standpoint that they obviously respect Denver. They know what how good Denver is, but I don't think they necessarily fear this matchup because I think they feel like they match up pretty well. It makes for a fascinating matchup because I feel like both teams have the right to be confident. It's just Denver's is a little bit more, maybe even a lot more earned at this point based on what they've accomplished.
Yeah, and it was Bruce Brown who said that last year after the playoffs. I know there are people within the Nuggets who felt that way as well. I didn't necessarily feel that. I don't know if it was just that it being the first round or, Phoenix was the ones to push them to 6. But, it was competitive. It was a competitive 5-game series. And look, Minnesota should be confident. I have never gotten the sense in any of these Nuggets Timberwolves matchups that Minnesota's scared of Denver or doesn't think they can compete with them. And a lot of these past regular season games have been really competitive. So, like, Minnesota should feel that way, that they should feel confident. And I think both teams have a healthy respect for one another. What I remember about that series last year, though, is there were storylines developing around, like, Nickeil Alexander guarding Jamal Murray.
Yep.
Um, he held him down for I think a couple games in the middle of that
Yep.
series, but then I think Jamal eventually got the better of that matchup. I think overall Minnesota's defense was pretty good on Nikola Jokic, too. The Nuggets though have been a team over, their three deep playoff runs, the
Yep.
bubble run, the championship run last year, and I guess this year, which is just, it's just
Presumably.
one
Yeah.
series.
Right.
But
Yeah.
this is how I see it going. They're a team that gets better as the playoffs go on.
Okay.
And a lot of that I think comes from just Nikola Jokic seeing different matchups and ramping up to that level of play from the regular season. Also Jamal Murray as well kind of feels his way into playoff series too. So I put this out on Twitter today. I think the Timberwolves, this series is going to be the toughest series the Nuggets have played in the last 2 years, but I think they're going to look better than they did against the Lakers against Minnesota, if
I think
that
that's
makes
fair.
sense.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And I think, I've been batting this around with some of our people here at the Star Tribune, but just the idea that still would be a series for either of these teams to get through after this one's done. And you would, who knows what's going to happen, but Oklahoma City, obviously the number one seed, that wouldn't be an easy series. Neither would, any other series against Dallas or the Clippers. But there's a sense I feel like that's developing, even though this is the 2-3 matchup, that the winner of this is maybe favored, at least at this point, to go to the finals. Do you share that? You share that sentiment right now?
Probably. Yeah. I think these are the two best teams in the West. Um, just from like how well-rounded both teams are, offensively, defensively. I know there were some questions about Minnesota on offense and particularly the late game offense. I
Yep.
think that's going to be something that's really interesting in this series if there's close games. Minnesota looked amazing in the first round, but they weren't really like tested in those close games, it seemed like. Um, so I do think these are the two best teams in the West. I think whoever wins this does have the inside track on the finals. And I mean, I think this series is going to be much tougher than whoever Denver or Minnesota could play in the Western Conference Finals potentially.
Royal Credit Union's smart checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union smart checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
Any final thoughts? Any like particular matchups you're looking forward to? I'm curious to see how the Wolves try to guard Murray in particular, just because they have more health this year with McDaniels healthy. They don't have to, throw Alexander Walker on him all the time. They don't have to throw Ant on him for change of pace. But yeah, the switching the Wolves do, how Denver counters that. Denver's obviously got size and length too with Gordon. He's such an interesting special player. And then of course Michael Porter Jr. I mean, Porter Jr. had a great, I don't know if it was the whole series, but every time I looked up, it seemed like he was having big games against the Lakers too. Like it's not a lot of weaknesses around the first, 5, 6, 7 players on either roster. It just feels like a great series.
It really does. Ethical basketball. I don't think there's going to be a lot of foul baiting in this series, which I'm
Right?
very excited about. After getting through the Lakers, that's a relief. Um, there's so many interesting things. You mentioned Michael Porter. He was like the story of the first round in a lot of ways for Denver. He had his
Personal
best
life too.
series
Yeah, his
ever.
personal life was blowing
with
up at that point.
And there is even some more news this morning about another one of his brothers, but he's locked in and focused, and he was incredible. His best playoff series as a Nugget against the Lakers. It's going to be interesting to see what happens off the bench in the non-Jokic minutes because they play Aaron Gordon at backup center. It's a really good lineup, but I don't know if it's faced a opposing second unit that can throw out Towns and Naz Reid at the same time. Denver struggled rebounding with their bench all year. I think that could be an issue as well. And then, yeah, Jaden McDaniels versus Jamal Murray. It's a great matchup. I think Jaden McDaniels might be the best Jamal Murray defender in the NBA just from a length and size and speed standpoint. I got to think he really is looking forward to that matchup. And Jamal's going to have to bring it, like he's not 100% right now. This week off is going to be big for him.
Yeah.
But like I said at the start, if the Nuggets need Jamal Murray to have a good series, they do. If he has a series like he had against the Lakers, I don't know if Denver can win.
which is crazy because he made 2 game-winning shots. But you're right, over the totality of the series. You're saying they won't be in a position to have a game-winning shot from him because Minnesota is just good enough, better than what the Lakers had over the balance of 48 minutes. And yeah, I mean, both of them got tested. I mean, Phoenix should have been a better test. I don't know what exactly was going on with them. That maybe it just proved to be, even after the regular season where the Wolves were 0-3 against Phoenix, something just switched and they figured it out. But yeah, I think both teams got tested to a degree, but this is going to be the test for each side, and I for one cannot wait for it. Harrison, any final words of wisdom? Anything else that you are looking forward to from all this, or any storylines that we didn't cover?
I can't wait to see what they devise for Chris Finch.
Yeah, me too.
How is he going to coach this
series? I don't know. He's probably going to be maybe second row. He's got to keep that thing elevated. I mean, what a end of the fourth quarter of the elimination game, and
that's wild.
It is wild. It's an interesting storyline. I don't think it's not devastating, but it's something to watch, especially in a close game, especially in a series where it feels like a lot of things are equal or up for grabs, at least. I mean, different strengths on these teams, but like you wonder how that plays into a series that on paper feels, like it could go either way. Denver, I think, certainly is the favored team, but it's a series that feels like wouldn't surprise me if either one of these teams won. And from that regard, yeah, how does this weirdness with the coach rupturing his patella tendon factor into all that?
Yeah, I'm just excited for some Mike and Nori in between quarter interviews on the national TV.
He's pretty good.
He was in Denver with Malone in the early Jokic days.
Really? So I don't think I remember that. Okay, nice.
Yeah. And I think until like 2016, 17 or something. So we know him.
Nice. Well, Harrison Wind, appreciate it. Don't hesitate to reach out when if ever you need a return on this. But let's watch this series and enjoy it. All right.
Looking forward to it.
Great stuff from Harrison Wind. Like we talked about, the interesting thing with this series is, of course, I mean, there's many interesting things, but the Chris Finch ruptured patellar tendon, had surgery Wednesday, how he's going to coach, how much Micah Nori is going to factor into this series, the assistant Wolves coach, how that's going to play out. That is an interesting subplot. I don't think it has a huge bearing on the series. A lot of coaching is, not in-game, it's before game. It's kind of the culture you create. It's the systems you put in place. It's less about X's and O's in the moment, but there is some of that, especially in a close series, so that will be worth monitoring. But just really good insights overall from Harrison. Hope you enjoyed that segment as much as I did. Let us now finish with the cooler. A couple things in there. 2 blowouts in the NBA on Wednesday. The Celtics easily advance, beat Miami in 5 games. The clincher 118-84. I watched a little bit of that game. Miami didn't look like it had any interest in being there. They knew they were cooked. No Jimmy Butler after an injury earlier in the series. So that was a pretty easy one to manage in that case. Dallas routing the Clippers. That game was at LA. 123-93, so Dallas up 3-2 in that series, looking like they will close it out, I would imagine, in Game 6 based on the Game 5 score. Dallas, Oklahoma City will be an interesting matchup in the other West semifinal, if that is how it turns out. Wolves Nuggets, of course, starts Saturday. The winner of that series will face the winner of Oklahoma City versus either Dallas or Clippers. And like I said, looking more likely it'll be Dallas now. That would be an interesting series to me. I don't think Oklahoma City automatically advances in that case. You got Luka, you got Kyrie Irving, you got a lot of things going on there. A lot of things to contend with, and Oklahoma City still a young team, a very good team, obviously, but a young team that is trying to kind of make its way in the postseason. So I will be curious to see how that other semifinal in the West turns out. Speaking of curious to see how it turns out, I'm curious to see who these players are on the Gophers basketball team. We just learned Wednesday that Cam Christie, also in the transfer portal. Elijah Hawkins, their excellent point guard from last year, had entered the portal. He's going to Texas Tech. You already lost Payne. You've already lost all these other players. It's just disheartening to think about where this roster is compared to where it ended the season, how much optimism there was for building this thing up. Now you've got different players coming in. Caleb Williams coming in from McAllister. That's exciting. He scored 41 against the Gophers in an exhibition game last year, but are these guys going to replace the guys they've lost? That's the question. That's what you always have to hope for, which you always have to try for. But it just feels like this is going to be a setback for Ben Johnson's team. I just can't imagine what he's thinking right now after all the momentum they gained this year and now how much they are losing potentially in the transfer portal this offseason. That will do it for me today. Like I said, Phil Miller's going to join me on Friday's show to talk more Twins. I'm sure I'll have plenty more to say about the Wolves as we get closer to that Denver matchup starting Saturday. Plenty of stuff coming up next week, too. I'm sure Chris Hine will be on a show, maybe two with me next week as we kind of get deeper into that Denver series. Royce on Monday, plenty of other stuff to talk about. So until tomorrow, I am Michael Rand, back at it again on Friday.